It's for us to protect our women. And when men cross the line, there has to be a penalty. When you use the death penalty, you take out defective genes from the gene pool. And then we end up with a load of weak, pussy men in society, breeding more weak men.
A woman in France.
With a husband.
Yeah. Who discovered after something like, it was after like 10 years or something.
Yeah.
Every night he would drug her with a very, very powerful drug.
Yeah.
And then as she lay comatose on the bed, he would invite men in to have sex with her unconscious
and film
body
it.
And film it.
Because she found the films.
I don't know actually how she discovered what happened.
I don't know, but can you imagine watching that for the first time?
Yeah, well, no, I can't. Yeah, no, it must have been.
Absolutely
no, I mean, it's a horrific story, but you made a very interesting point before, which sounded plausible, but then I'm questioning now whether it is, because the men who had sex with her were not particularly strange men, different men. They were neighbours, there were people in the local village, there were people he knew nearby, there were people he worked with. So he made them aware, and my wife has mentioned this. She said, why did none of those men say when they came in, because a lot of them said, oh, I thought she was in on it, or she was blah, 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 whatever. She clearly wasn't. My instinct in that situation, if I came into a situation like that, or walked in, I'd go, whoa, hang on, this isn't right, I'm calling the police. So that is what I believe. I'd love to believe that's what I would do.
I'm sure it's true.
But these men... And they were not unusual. They weren't like flown in from Afghanistan, or I'm maligning Afghanistan now. But what I mean is they were local, normal, working men. A lot of them knew her or knew. So what happened there?
I think that's completely different to what we just discussed with Lily and those young lads. Those men were specifically chosen. He didn't invite lots of people and he decided. This went on for decades. He spent time in conversation with different people at work, in the village, whatever, and he would have tested people.
Yes.
He would have inferred things, and they would have said, yeah, well, I've done threesomes, and it would have been a slow process before he trusted them to invite him in to the horrendous abuse of his wife.
Yeah.
Every one of those men is guilty of an horrendous crime.
Yeah.
I could understand if his wife was drunk and they had sex with her, because she was semi-conscious, she was laughing and joking, we all got carried away. But he drugged her until she was comatose.
Yeah.
She was a sack of meat, and they abused her. Again, some men are dangerous pigs. Violent, dangerous pigs, and it's probably a trait in more men than we think it is.
Well, that's the point I was making, because these were a lot of local men.
But the reason why we don't see it is because social norms and standards keeps them in check.
Yeah.
But once you get a pervert who starts seeking out other perverts and tells that pervert it's okay to be a pervert because I'm a pervert, you start having that group mentality.
Yeah.
Same with the grooming gangs in the Pakistani community. Any one of those men never would have raped or abused a white girl on his own. It was only because there was a group of them, it became socially acceptable, and they validated each other. And this is a different version of our version of the Pakistani grooming gang. That's what that was, basically.
It's a good point.
I would be looking, it's things like that I'd be looking at death penalty. Death penalty for all, if they'd all been drunk, and it happened once, and he said, well, I thought she was up for it because, she's changed her mind now. But they've got documented evidence of video. She's being drugged. And I'd be looking at death penalty. It's for us to protect our women. And when men cross the line, there has to be a penalty. Because if we don't penalise those men to an nth degree, the message that sends to other men is, you know what, it's worth a chance here, because all that will happen to me is I might be prosecuted. A man going, what might happen to me is I'm going to be hung by the neck until dead. That won't stop all men, but believe me, it has an impact on some men.
As you know, I'm not a supporter of the death penalty, but...
oh, you are? You just don't know you are.
Yeah. I mean, I think the society that would interest you would be the one in Dubai. It's very similar to that. There's very little crime, very little stuff like that goes on, because they are very, very severe in terms of their punishment.
Yeah, and it's more than just severity of the punishment. It's because when you use the death penalty, you take out defective genes from the gene pool. And over hundreds of years, that has a big impact.
Yeah.
They reckon that was one of the reasons why we became a more peaceful nation, was because of dueling and because of our version of honour killings hundreds of years ago, where the people who'd want to duel would be the most violent people in society, and someone always died in it. And we were eliminating the violent genes all the time.
Yeah.
And that's what a death penalty did. The people who were more criminally inclined but violently inclined, we were taking some of them out of the gene pool all the time, so we're weakening their genes.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? And then you look at the Second World War, and that wiped out probably most of our young,
the bravest people
men
in our country.
Is the society we're living in now, where, I mean, you talk about over-feminized men, is that a direct result of that?
There's a chapter in my book about
this,
right, okay. And that's exactly my conclusion, is over the 2 world wars, we lost 1.25 million men in this country.
Yeah.
And they would have been the bravest men of this country, because the brave people go to the front, the cowards stay behind, towards the end of the group. So the braver you are, the more likely to kill. And because we had 2 world wars so close to each other, there wasn't enough time to replenish all those genes in society. So we went bang, 8,500,000 of World War One and 350,000 World War Two. Bang, bang, 2 generations. And then we end up with a load of weak, pussy men in society, breeding more weak men. And it's not necessarily the genes, it's also the traits you teach your children as well. So the brave men all went, they didn't have an opportunity to teach their children to be a man. And I think I've had about
interesting.
There's definitely a connection to those 2 world wars.
Yeah, that's really interesting.